Hello, my name is Dario Romero, and I am an attorney here in Tempe, Arizona. And in this video, we'll be talking about the political asylum, the form I-589, and the whole process and what to expect. So first, let's look at the overview of the video. We'll be talking exactly what is political asylum, what is persecution, how do you request political asylum, what happens when you enter the United States, are you released, are you eligible to have a bond. Also, I'm going to be talking as to what type of evidence you need to support your asylum application, and also the work permit, the work authorization document. That's also a very common question. When do you get it? How do you apply for it? And also, I will address what happens if you win your case, and also what happens if you lose your case. Okay, so if there's any specific portion that applies to you, you can skip ahead, or you can watch the whole video so you can fully understand in a nutshell what political asylum is. So again, what is political asylum? So this is a form of protection that the United States offers for someone coming from another country where they're being harmed or persecuted. And it has to be based on one of the 5 protected grounds, which I will talk about then in just a few moments. So we have to establish that the person was harmed or mistreated or threatened, and it can be considered persecution. This was that we were harmed because of political, gender, race, religion, or a particular social group, and that it was harm, it was threats, it was violence, it was rape, it was something significant that happened to you, or that it will happen to you in the future if it didn't happen to you in the past. We also have to prove that the government cannot help you, or that they're not able to help you, or that they're the cause of that harm directly. So here are the 5 areas that the government protects. This is that if we argue that you were persecuted, that you were harmed, we have to connect it to one of these 5 reasons: race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and social group. And social group can be a lot of different subcategories. And basically, this is something that you cannot change, or you shouldn't change. So that can include being a man, being a woman, being a part of the LGBT community. Even you cannot change what family you're from. So if you're being persecuted based on the family vendetta, or even a specific tribe or indigenous group, there's a lot of different subcategories that can be argued that it's a particular social group. Okay, so how do you request it? You have to come to the United States. You can request it at the border. So if you go directly to the border, you say, I'm seeking political asylum, and they will start the process to initiate whether or not you are truly seeking political asylum and that you are fearful of returning to your country. From there, your case can start the immigration court process, that they'll give you a document that you have to show up to court, and then you also request it in front of a judge. But what if you already are in the United States and you don't have a court hearing, you're not in front of an immigration judge? You can still file your application with the agency USCIS. So they have very good instruction manuals or a form about the forms that tell us exactly what evidence and how to file it and where to file it. So if you're really good at following instructions, click on the instructions of the forms. And the main form that you're submitting is called the I-589. That's the political asylum form. Also, very important rule: once you enter the United States, you have 1 year to submit your asylum application. If you do not submit this application within the first year, then it will impact your case, and then possibly you will not qualify for political asylum. If you have a very good reason why you didn't file it within the first year, then you have to explain that to USCIS or the judge, and they'll decide whether or not they make an exception that you didn't file it within the first year for a really good reason. But if you don't have a really good reason, that will jeopardize your case. So this is a tricky part when it comes to someone seeking asylum. It matters how, when you seek asylum, you can potentially be detained with immigration. So not everyone is eligible for a bond in front of a judge. So if a person goes directly to the border or the port of entry directly with immigration to seek asylum, then you will be considered an arriving alien, And if you are detained and then you have a hearing in front of a judge, the judge does not have authority to issue a bond. However, if a person enters illegally into the United States and then turns themselves into immigration, or they're detained by immigration, then because the person was already inside the United States, and even if they're detained and their proceedings start in front of a judge, then the judge does have the authority to issue a bond. So it's just little technicalities, just because if you went directly to immigration or they catch you inside the United States, it can make a big difference as to whether you can ask for a bond in front of a judge. Also, ICE can let you go. They can let you go on your own recognizance, saying that, okay, well, you're promising that you're gonna check in every time we request you. You're gonna go to your court hearings. They're basically trusting you that you're gonna do what they ask. ICE, which is they're the police of immigration. They can also give you a bond themselves, and the bond is just money that you're paying, and you're basically promising that you're going to show up to your future court hearings, and if you don't show up, then they can potentially keep that money. Also, what we can request is a ICE parole. We're asking the ICE to release you, and we have to show them sufficient evidence as to why you're here, that you have family, that you're not going to flee the country, criminal history. All that matters when we're seeking a ICE parole. And then, and also the considerations, like if you've lived here in the United States, if you have a strong case. And in general, for a judge or ICE to release a person, they have to determine two things. One, that you're not a flight risk, meaning that you're not going to flee justice or hide or anything like that. And two, that you're not a danger to the community or the country. So this is where they look at criminal history, criminal arrests. If someone was arrested for a criminal action and they end up in immigration, then they can use that to determine whether or not they're going to release you, even if there has been no conviction. So that's the way immigration works. It's a little unfair, but they can use a lot of different things to determine whether or not they're going to give you a bond, or if they're going to release you under your own recognizance. So what type of evidence do you need? So first, you need to prove that you were persecuted in the past. And if you weren't persecuted in the past, then we need to show that if you return to your country, you will be persecuted. So let's say you left your country because you were for political reasons. Then you have to show that because of that political thought or ideology, that someone persecuted because of that. And you have to show that, okay, yes, someone hurt me, I called the police, there was a police report, there were eyewitnesses. And then we have to a person has to show that there's a reasonable possibility that if you're persecuted in the past, that it will most likely happen in the future. And if you didn't show past persecution, you have to show that it will happen if you return. So that happens when there's, let's say someone's in the United States and things happen in their home country, or something changed that now makes them fearful of returning. So that can be a lot of different things, and it's very important for you to get a consultation with an immigration attorney in your area, because little details can change. They can make a huge difference, and no case is the same. One of the hard parts in any asylum case, that we have to show that whatever happened to that person, that persecution, the threats, that negative thing that happened, it was directly connected to one of the areas that the government protects for asylum. So for example, if it was based on religion. So let's say a person was attacked by a group of 5 people, and then the person says, well, they attacked me because of my religion. And then the next question is, okay, how do we prove that was the reason why they attacked you? So now if there was a history, there was comments, there was evidence that they threatened you because of your religion, then that's important. But if we cannot connect the act to the religion, we cannot just assume that was the case without any evidence, then that's where the case may be difficult. So we have to find the connection between the harm and the reason. And that's sometimes the hard part, because let's assume that also a person was killed. We can assume why they were killed, but if you don't know, or there's no evidence to support that, then it's a weak asylum case. And also, what type of documents can you get? If you went to the police, there should be a police report. If you went to the hospital, medical records, if there were any eyewitnesses, maybe some declarations. So the law says that you should present all the possible available evidence. And I say possible because at the same time, the government doesn't want you to expose yourself to danger just to try to get certain documents. So for example, if you made a police report and then it's the police that's persecuting you or the government, and it's unsafe for you or to someone else to get those documents, then don't get them. But you have to at least try or have a really good explanation why you weren't able to produce these documents. Also, you have to show that you're actually from the country you're claiming to be, because someone from Mexico cannot say, oh, I'm from Cuba and that's why I'm afraid to return. No, they have to show that they're the birth certificate, some type of legal status in the country of nationality that you're claiming, so it's birth certificate or passport. If there's any reports, letters, complaints, anything that's accessible and you can safely gather, you should get it. And also your testimony. That is the strongest evidence you can present in your asylum case. And that's why it's very important to be very concise. And this is where having an attorney will make the difference, because it's a different level of presenting a case. You have to present it to each element that you have to prove. And sometimes a person can talk a lot and not really address why a person's eligible for asylum. So I always get a good, at least a consultation from an experienced immigration attorney, and also for you to know if you have a strong case or if it's in the middle or what type of evidence you need to present, or it can delay your case, or it can cause additional negative consequences. And every time you give your testimony, you have to be credible. You cannot contradict yourself. Changing your story is a bad thing. There are situations where you don't remember things, or things come out later. So that's why it's very important to have a strategy from the beginning. For example, when I submit an asylum application with my clients, and I don't know all the information, I'm very generic or very general at what I put, and I address that at a later time. I will supplement a more detailed affidavit or declaration from my client. If the judge or the officer finds you not to be credible, then that's an issue, and they can deny the asylum solely based on the fact that they don't believe what you're saying. That's why it's always consistent as to what you said when you entered the United States, what you're saying in your application, and also what you're saying at the actual hearing or interview. And it all has to match. And if it doesn't match, you have to have a good reason why. And you also have to be ready for counter arguments. So if you're in front of a judge, there's going to be a prosecutor arguing against you, or also the officer, things that can be thrown at you that can change your case. And they're very realistic things that can materially change the case. So for example, let's say that since you came, you filed for asylum, and it's been 2 to 3 years, but something changed in your home country that maybe makes it a lot safer for you to return, or at least in theory. You have to be ready to address why that change doesn't make it safer. You have to be ready to address all these things, because if it's safer and you have no real reason to not be afraid, then that's one of the things that can affect your case. Also, if you have lived in other parts of your country and you haven't been persecuted or harmed, then that shows that you can live in your country, just don't live in specific areas. Or if you have lived in other countries apart from your own country, and let's say that you sought asylum and you were granted asylum, there's a lot of little technicalities that can damage your case. And again, every case is different. It's hard not to compare. That's human nature, that we kind of try to make sense of things. But even as attorneys, like, we have different results because it can change based on little details. It can change based on the judge, an officer, the client. There's a lot of factors that can determine how a case is going to turn out. Also, if you were previously denied an asylum in the past and now you're seeking asylum again, if you're presenting the same facts, the same scenario, you're not going to win the case unless it's something drastic or something new that previously wasn't known or it wasn't disclosed. Also, if you have any prior criminal convictions, that can negatively disqualify you from asylum. If they catch you lying or misrepresentation or file an application that you made up information, we do not recommend that you lie in order to get an asylum, because if they catch you on a lie, then they'll disqualify you from a lot of different things with immigration. And even if later, if something changes and it's legitimate, the fact that they disqualify you in the past is also a big factor as to whether they believe you now. Even if it's true what you're saying now, it has negative consequences. So one of the things when people come into the United States is, when can I get my work permit? Here in the United States, technically anyone can work, but if you want to have authorization from the government to do it legally, you need to get a work permit. So for asylum, you're not eligible for a work permit until you file your application and 180 days pass from the date that you filed it. At the 180 days mark, you can immigration can approve your work permit. Doesn't mean it's going to happen right at the 180 days. It's just that after that date, they can approve your work permit. So you can file your work permit 30 days early before the 180 days. That way, so after that date, they can finally approve it. And once you file an application for a work permit, it can take anywhere from 3 to 8 months for it to be approved. So just know that at minimum it can be 6 months, it can be more than that before you get your work authorization document. Once you get that work permit, usually you will be able to get your social security number from another agency. And that number, that's something that a lot of agencies, state government places require for you to get a proper identification, or sometimes in order to get a job or an employment, you need to have a social security number. Again, talk to an attorney in the area, because every state is a little bit different, every company is a little bit different, and also every position that you're trying to do might be different. So once you get a work permit, it's valid for 2 years. And if you're in court and you file your asylum application, but then you request an extension or a continuance on your case, that can stop the 180-day calculation. And it might prolong the ability of you getting your work permit. Another question is when people get a parole, which is the form, the I-94, sometimes it's valid for like a year, it can be more or it can be less. Technically, yes, you can get a work permit under that parole, but because a work permit can take anywhere from 3 to 8 months for it to process, and let's say the parole is valid for a year, if you do get your work permit, it might be valid for 1 or 2 months or 3 months. So sometimes it's not beneficial to apply for it when it's going to expire shortly after receiving it. So that's why I like to recommend people to request it once you get through the asylum process, and that work permit is valid for 2 years. All right, so what happens if you win your case? So if you win your asylum case and you're protected, they're not going to send you back to your home country. You can also apply for a travel document while you're waiting for you to get your green card, or waiting for you to just the time to pass. Because after 1 year of winning your case, whether that be with USCIS or immigration court, after 1 year you can apply for your green card. You can apply a little bit earlier than the 1 year, but they will not be able to approve it until 1 year passes. So if you lose, well, let's say that your case is at USCIS. If they don't deny your case, they just refer the case over to a judge, saying that you're not credible, or there's this issue with your case. However, you get a second bite at the apple once your case is in front of an immigration judge. So let's assume that you're already with the court and you lose your case, then sometimes you might be eligible for voluntary departure. Or if you're not and you do not win your case, then the judge can deport you, or they remove you from the country. Just because that happens doesn't mean that it will happen, because someone has the ability, the right to appeal a judge's decision, and it's usually within 30 days from that decision. And then if you do appeal, then that kind of freezes the judge's decision until the next court listens to your case. And here it's the Immigration Board of Appeals. And even if you lose your case at the Board of Immigration Appeals, you can still appeal one level up to a circuit court. But make sure that you talk to your attorney. Make sure that they're licensed in whatever circuit that you're in. and to be able to give you a better opinion whether you have a strong case or not. So that was a lot of information. I try to keep it as short as possible, but that is a good overview of the whole asylum process. Again, this is not a replacement for proper legal advice, and if you have a case and you have questions, I highly recommend getting an attorney. Talk to an attorney in your area, because the laws might differ depending on which area of the United States you live in. Okay, and if you are in the Tempe or Phoenix area, you can always call me. My contact information is on the screen. So I hope this video was helpful. I wish you a lot of luck in your case or whoever you're helping, and just have a great day. Thank you.